Now let's start with 5.2. 5.2 sales packers, suitcases, shop run. Now Charles Baker sells travel suitcases. The end is on the 30th of June 2018. Now we are required to calculate the value of the closing stock on the 30th of June 2018 using the first in, first out method. Inventory that is so basically your FIFO method simply means that the inventory that is bought in first is going to be the inventory that is going to be sold first. First in, first out. Now, based on this, they need us to calculate the value of the stock using the FIFO method at the end of the year. Now, my closing stock, right? My closing stock units, in terms of units, can you see I have 496 units at the end of the year, right? So I'm going to say, okay, to answer 5.2.1, right? 5.2.1. So my closing stock units at the end of the year, it's how much? So let me just, my closing stock units are 496,000. 496 units, right? I have 496 units at the end. Now, from those 496, right, based on the FIFO method, I know that, all right, 450 would be from my latest from June, right? So obviously, stock which was purchased on September, December, as well as some of the stock purchased on March, we expect them to be sold. Why? Because this was the stock that was bought in first. Can you see that here we sold 3,050 travel suitcases, meaning that from that 3,050, we expect all our opening stock to be sold, right, which is 420 units due to the first in, first out method. And also we expect the 850 from September to be sold, as well as the 980 from December. Same applies with March, right? But not all stock from March was sold. Now let us look at this example. Let's try to answer this example. Now we need to identify the value of this 496 units of suitcases which were remaining at the end of the year. Now I'm saying 450 were from June because this was our latest purchase in June, 450, but then in June there were returns of 25. So this, as a result, from June, right, would have 450,000 minus 25. So as a result, the number of units that we had in June was 425 units. These were the units that were present in June, right? But remember, our closing stock consists of 496 units, meaning that the difference between the two, right, if you take a 496 subtracted by 425, you would get 71 units. Now, the difference between the two, it will be inventory from where? From your March or March 2018. So you're gonna take your inventory from June plus 71 from March. So it's gonna be 425 plus 71. It was for March, and total it would make a total of 496 units, right? Because these were our latest stock or the latest stock that was purchased, which is the one which is going to be sold afterwards. Now, this is gonna be from March. So now we know that 425 units out of this 496, 425 is from June, and 71 units is from March, right? Now we're going to calculate the cost, right? Now 425 using the average cost from June. So here we're gonna say 425 multiplied by how much? So the unit price in June was 30,040. 30,040. So we're gonna say, all right, multiply by 30,040. So 425 multiplied by 3,040. So it's going to be 1 million, right? This is going to be equal to 1,292,000. Now, for March, the unit price for March, so we're going to say 71 units multiplied by the unit price for March. So for March, our unit price was how much? 2,930. So multiply by 2,930. So 71 multiplied by 2,930. So it's going to be 208,000 and 30 and 30. Now, if you add the two, right, meaning that, okay, if you add the 1,292,000, right, 1,292,000 plus 208,030, right, you would get the total value of your closing stock at the end of the year. Now, the total value of your closing stock. It will be the addition of the two, 1,292,000 plus 208,080. Now, you would get a total value of your closing stock using the FIFO method. That's 1,500,080, right? 1,500,080. Now, this is the value of your trading stock at the end of the year, right? So now, the second question requires us to calculate, okay, the essential suspects that suitcases have been stolen, right? Provide a calculation to support his concern, meaning that here we need to prove that indeed suitcases were stolen, right? We're going to be making our calculations, making use of the number of suitcases, right? So basically, we're going to say, okay, what is our opening stock, or what is our number of suitcases at the beginning? Our number of suitcases at the beginning were 420 units, right? And how much did we purchase? So we purchased 850 during September, plus 980 December, plus 875 on March, and we also purchased 450 on June. But on June there were returns of 25 suitcases, so we're gonna subtract this 25, right? And also we sold 3,050 travel suitcases. So subtracting this sales, or the number of units that were sold, we expect to get the number of units at the end of the suitcases, which we are now by subtracting the sales, we expect to get the number of suitcases which are remaining at the end of the year. So we're gonna say, okay, my number of suitcases at the beginning, right? So now I'm doing 5.2.2. So I'm gonna say number of what? Of suitcases at what? At the beginning of the year. Now, number of suitcases at the beginning of the year, we had how many suitcases at the beginning? We had 420 suitcases. So we had 420. Now, how many we purchased? So now here we need purchased suitcases. Now, how many we purchased? So we said what? We purchased 850, right? So we purchased 850, and we also purchased 980, and we also purchased 875, as well as 450. Now there were 25 returns. So here we're gonna say, all right, purchased is equals to 850 plus 980 plus 875 plus 450 for June. But for June, remember there were 25 returns. This is the number of this is the total for your number of units which were purchased during the year, right? Now, remember, we're going to do what? We're going to add these purchases, or the number of units purchased. So you need to add the amount here. Now here, what we're gonna do, we have to do what? Subtract, right? Number of units sold, right? Or suitcases, cases which were sold. We need to subtract them. Now we sold how many suitcases? Now, based on this information, it says that we sold 3,050 suitcases. So we're gonna say this, okay, 3,050 suitcases. So minus 3,050 suitcases. So at the end of the year, we expect that the number of suitcases that we have should be amount to 500 suitcases. Right, these are the number of suitcases that we expect to have at the end of the year. But here, on our closing stock, it says we only have 496 units of suitcases, meaning that what? The difference between the two, right, which is 500 minus 496, it's 4. Now, means that 4 suitcases were stolen, right? 4 suitcases, or 4 units of suitcases were stolen, because we expected to have 500 suitcases at the end of the year, but we only have 496. Now, as a result, this shows that 4 units of suitcases were stolen. Now, this is how we can go about calculating 5.2.2. Now, 5.2.3 says Charles is concerned about the volume of stock on hand. Now, calculate for how long his stock is expected to last. Now, meaning that here we're gonna need to calculate our what? Our stock holding period, and also state one problem, right, for keeping too much stock on hand, as well as one problem for keeping insufficient stock on hand. Now, first thing first, we're gonna first start by trying to calculate the stock holding period. Now, I'm saying that, right, the formula for your average stock holding period is gonna be what? Your the value of your stock, value of stock of your trade or your trade inventory at the beginning, right, plus the value of your stock at the end. Now, these two multiplied by, right, a half, right, all over your cost of sales, and all multiplied by 365 costs. Remember, this needs to be in terms of days. Now, how can you go about calculating your cost of sales? Now, the formula to calculate your cost of sales, it's always the same, right? So your cost of sales is gonna be equal to your opening stock plus your purchases, right? Less any returns if they were there. So less returns, and also less what? Your closing stock. Closing stock. Now this would be equal to your cost of sales. Now based on that, I want us to try and calculate our stock holding period, right? We're gonna first start by recognizing the value of our stock at the beginning. Now the value of our stock at the beginning is 913,500, as you can see here, right? 913,500. So I'm gonna say 913,500. Now, the value of my stock at the end of the year, of which I have value of my closing stock at the end of the year, which I have calculated, right? I've calculated it as 1,500,030, right? And these two, I'm gonna need to multiply them by, so multiply them by 1/2, right? Now, what about my cost of sales? Now, my cost of sales, I said it consists of the opening stock or the value of my opening stock. So it's going to be how much? It's going to be 913,500, right? Plus any purchases. Now, purchases during the year, let me see. Now, my purchases during the year amounted to 8,460,850. 4,860. So let me see, it's how much? So they amounted to 8,460,000, right? 8,460,000 and what? 850. 850. Now my returns, the 25 units which were returned, was worth 76,000. So I'm gonna subtract 76,000 here. 76,000. And less the value of my closing stock. Now, the closing stock I've calculated it as 1,500,030, and I have to multiply everything by how many days? By 365 days. Now, punching that into your calculator, you should get an average stock holding period of 54, right? So I think it should be how much? 59,4 days. This simply means that each and every suitcase, when it's bought in, it will stay for a period of at least 59,4 days before it can be sold, right? Now, our average stock holding period is 59,4 days. Now, the question said, but now it said that we should state one problem with keeping too much stock on hand. Now, the problem with keeping too much stock on hand is that if your employees could see too much stock and as a result they would see less movement of the stock, this could tempt them, they could be tempted rather, right, to less movement of the stock could what? Could lead or could cause your employees to steal, right? To steal the inventory which is there in the business because they see what? They see that there is less movement of the stock. As a result, they may decide to steal. Now, Another problem with having insufficient stock, or a problem with having insufficient stock, is that what? Now, this is a disadvantage because why? Because you will not be able to meet the needs of your consumers whenever they want something on you. For instance, whenever they want suitcases and they find that you do not have the suitcases, they would go elsewhere, right? They will try to find the suitcase elsewhere. As a result, you would lose customers as a result of you not being able to meet your current consumer needs, right? So that's the problem with not keeping sufficient stock on hand. Now, one problem with keeping too much stock is that less movement of the stock may lead to the staff deciding to steal, right? And also cost of storage, right? The cost of storage would be high, meaning that you would be spending more on storage costs. Right? Now, that's all with regards to calculate your inventory valuation calculation with regards to this question, right? If ever there's still something that you didn't understand that we covered here, feel free to always reach out. Now let us look into the next question. Now this question I'm not going to answer it because it relates to your fixed asset, and our focus here is inventory valuation, right? We are not focused on doing the fixed asset calculations for now, right? Now moving on to the next question, right, which is 5.2 relating to your Hot Wheels company. Now, they say you are provided with information relating to Hot Wheels for the 3 months ending 30 September 2017. Now, the business trades in motorbikes and helmets. Now, Mike, the owner, wants to access his stock records before any price increase during the year. Now, here they want us to calculate the value of our closing stock using specific identification method. Now, as we have said, that the specific identification method is for companies, right, which sell unique items, like for instance, and those unique items should be big identifiable items, like for instance your dealerships, right? Your car dealerships, there are different car models in which the dealership could sell, and each kind of model has its own cost price. Now this is the method that dealerships use, your specific identification method. Now they want us to use this method right over here to calculate the value of our closing stock. Now let us go about doing that. First, we're gonna start by recognizing our opening stock. So our opening stock, which was on July, we had 12 units, right? Of the A02 model, and it costed how much? 291,600. So here, right? So here, let me just do it. So here, what I'm saying is that, all right, I'm calculating 5.2.3. So it's 5.2.3. Now, my opening stock, which was the A02 model, consisted of how many units? Consisted of 12 units. Now, which costed how much? 291,600. 291,600. Now, how many models did I purchase with regards to the A02? I purchased six or additional 6 units, right? So with regards to the A02, now I'm on my purchases. Now, with regards to my purchases, my A02 model, right? I purchased how many units? 6 units, right? Six, six new units. And what was the cost of those? Now, the cost of those 6 units, it was 145,800. So 145,800. Now, what did I also purchase? I purchased the A03 model, and I think I purchased 15 units from the A03 model. So A03 model, 15 new units. And what are the cost of those units? Now, those units were worth 411,000. And the other model is A04 model. And how many new units did I bought, or did I buy rather, for the A04 model? It is 18 units. So I had 18 new units. And what was the cost of those units? So it was 568,800. 568,800. Now, right, now with regards to my sold. Now I sold how many? So here I'm gonna say, all right, my opening stock, right, which was worth 291,600 plus my purchases, right, with respect to my A02 model, A03 model, as well as my A04 model, right? So it's going to be 291,600 plus 145,800 plus 411,000 plus 568,800, right? Now, what am I going to subtract? Now I'm going to subtract. So I'm going to subtract my sales, right? The amount for my sales. Now, with regards to the A02 model, I sold how many units, right? So I sold 8 units, right? So here I sold 8. Sold. Now, what was the cost of those 8 units, right? Those 8 units, right? So I'm gonna say 8, right? So I'm gonna say 8 multiplied by how much? Now, each A02 model was worth how much? The cost price per unit it was 24,300. So multiplied by 24,300, right? Now, with regards to the A03 model, how many units did I sell? Now, with regards to the A03, I sold 11 units, right? So 11 sold. Now, here I'm going to say, all right, 11. Now, what was the unit cost of my A03 model? Now, my A03, right, each model for my A03 costed me 27,400. So, multiply by 27,400. Now, what about my A04 model? How many did I sell? Now, I sold 18. Okay, sorry. I sold 10 units, right? So 10 was sold. So we're going to say, okay, 10. What is the unit price for the A04 model? Now each now each A04 model costed me 31,600. So multiply by 31,600. Right. So these are the amounts that I need to subtract. Right. So the first one, right, which is 8 multiplied by 24,300. Now this is going to be 194,400. Now the second amount is going to be what? 11 multiplied by 27,400, which is going to be 301,400, right? Now the third amount that I need to subtract is going to be what? 10 multiplied by 31,600, which is 316,000, right? So to calculate the value, right? Now the value of trading stock at the end, right? Set is gonna be what? So it's gonna be your opening stock of 291,600 plus your purchases, right? So it's gonna be what? It's gonna be 291,600 plus my purchases of 145,800 plus 411,000 plus 568,800. And now I need to subtract my sales. I'm gonna subtract how much? 194,400 minus 301,400 minus 316,000. Now the value of my trading stock at the end using the value of my trading stock at the end using the specific identification method is gonna be 605,400. Now this will be your final answer. Now moving on to the next, right? Mike requires your advice on the 3 different models of the motorbike, right? Now, how are you going to advise Mike? You're gonna advise him based on what? Based on this information or the information you have prepared here, right? or based on these calculations, you can try and advise Mike with regards to the three models. Okay, now let us first start off with the. Okay, let me first start by advising him on the A02 model. Right now, as you can see that the A02 model, he had more of it. Can you see his opening stock was 12 units, and he also had or purchased new 6 units, but he only managed to sell 8, which was the least selling model. Now, in my opinion, I think he should stock less of this A02 as it is not in demand compared to the other models, right? Means that he should reduce the stock of A02. That's my first advice that I could give to him. Now, with regards to the A03, now the A03, can you see that this is the model in which he made most of his sales on. Now, this is the most popular model. Now, as a result, I think he should stock more of the A03 as it is more in demand and it is more popular compared to the other model, right? That's the second advice I could give with regards to Mike. Now, what about another advice? What advice can I give you? What advice can I give to Mike? Now, let's see. Let's see with regards to the A04 model. Now, the cost of the A04, right? So the A04, its cost price is 31,600, right? Now, its selling price, right, is going to be this 505,600. Now, the cost price of each A04 model is 31,600, right? The selling price is going to be the 10 divided by 505,600, which is 50,560. Now, I think you should stock more of the A04 model because the gross profit per unit it's bigger on this item compared to other items. So you can also try and do the calculations of the other gross profits for other respective models. But the gross profit is bigger on the A04 model. When you take its cost of 31,600 multiplied by its sale per unit, I mean when you take the sale per unit of your A04 model subtracted by your cost per unit of your A04, you would get a higher gross profit compared to the other models. So I think you should also stock more of the A04. Why? Because it has a higher gross profit and it's also the second selling model, right? It's also in demand after the A03. So it will be a good investment if they stock more of the A04 model. Now that's what I can advise Mike on, right, based on this information right over here. Now 5.2.3, right, relates to your helmets. Now they need us to calculate the value of the closing stock using the weighted average method, right? So 5.2.3, now 5.2.3, they want us to calculate the value of the closing stock using the weighted average method. Now remember, with regards to your average weighted method, I said what? I said that you need to calculate an average price, and that average price is the price that you're gonna use to calculate the value of your trading stock at the beginning or the value of your trading stock at the end of the year, right? Now, what is the formula to calculate your average price? Now, your average price, right? Okay, let me just do this. Now, the formula to calculate your average price, right? So this would be what? The value of your stock at the beginning plus purchases, all right? The value of your purchase stock, right? Less the value of any returns. Now, with respect to your denominator, this here, it's specifically for your number of units. So here, the first one is going to be the number of units of stock at the beginning plus the number of purchased units, right? Less the number of returns or returned rather units. And from here, you will get your average price. Okay. Now, let us try and calculate the average price for this. for our helmets based on that formula. Now, the value of our stock at the beginning is 15,000, right? So we're gonna see, all right, what is the value of our stock at the beginning? So it's 15,000. Now, what is the number of stock we have at the beginning of the year? We had 30 units. So here on your denominator, you just simply going to say 30. Now, what about your purchases? How many helmets did you purchase during the year? And you purchased 75 units of helmets, right? So on your denominator, number of purchase units, so there were 75. What about the value of those purchase units? So we purchased helmets, right, to the value of how much? 39,300. So plus 39,300. Let's see if there were any returns. So five defective helmets, right, from the purchase in August 2017 were returned to the supplier for a full refund. So they were bought or they were bought on August, right? Now there were five helmets which were returned. So here I'm gonna need to subtract five. Now what is the value of those five? Now here I'm going to say, okay, five, they were bought in when? In August, right? Meaning that they were bought at the price of 525,000. So to get what? To get the value of those returned, we're gonna say 5 multiplied by 525. Now punching this into your calculator, you would get an amount of 2,625. 2,625. And that's 2,625. 2,625. Now I need to multiply this by my number of stock at the end to get the value of my stock. Now, this is my average price, right? This total right over here is for my average price. Now, I need to multiply that average price by my number of stock at the end. Because why? I am asked to calculate the what? Calculate the value of my closing stock at the end, right? Now, how many units of or helmets do I have at the end of the year? I have 12 units, right? So I'm going to multiply this by 12. So, okay, let me punch this into my calculator. So 15,000 plus 39,300 subtract 2,625 all over 30 plus 75 minus 5. Now the average price is going to be 516,75. So multiply by 12 units. So I'm going to get the value of my closing stock as 6,201. Now this is the value of my closing stock, 6,201. Now, FIFO 2.4 is the weighted average method, right? Appropriate for what? For the helmets. Explain 1 point. Right? They just need you to only make 1 point. Now, the trick here is that if you can't explain why your weighted average method is appropriate for helmets, try to explain why the other methods are not appropriate to calculate or to value your helmets, right? For instance, let's say if you say yes, right? Now you can say yes. Why? Because remember, we're using the weighted average to calculate what? To calculate the value of items which have similar value, right? Or the value of your trading stock, which are similar items of similar value. This is what we use the weighted average method for, right? Now, you could also say yes, right? Reason why you could give a reason why the other methods are not appropriate. Now let us start with the specific identification method. Now, with regard to your specific identification method, we said you're gonna make use of it whenever you're selling inventory which is unique. right? Meaning that you have different kinds of inventory which is unique, and that inventory can be specifically identified. Like for instance, the model of your vehicle. Now, with regards to helmets, these are similar items, meaning that your specific identification method for it, calculations or rather method, it won't be applicable in this case, right? Now let's go to your FIFO. Now your first thing first, I'll simply say says that the inventory which is first to be bought in, it will be the one that will be sold first, and mostly it's used by retail companies in order to sell what, to enable them to have less items which are expired, stuff like that, right? That's for the main reason is to make sure that they do not have stale products. As a result, the ones in which are older, the ones in which needs to be sold first. Now, with regards to your helmets, whether which ones are going to be sold first or the new ones are going to be sold after. Now, that won't really make a difference, right? That would really be inappropriate, or it won't be appropriate in this case. Whether you sell the helmet that you bought in first or at the beginning of the year, or you sell the one that you bought in after, doesn't matter because your helmets do not have an expiring date, right? So it doesn't really matter, meaning that the FIFO method in this case won't be applicable or won't be appropriate, right? So hence the weighted average method would be applicable for this. Now, 2.5 says Mike suspects that helmets are being stolen from the shop despite security cameras being installed. Now this is a similar question to the one that we have done with regards to this one right over here. This one, whereby Charles suspected that suitcases have been stolen. Now we need to do the same here, right? With respect to helmets. Now they say Mike suspects that helmets are being stolen from the shop despite security cameras being installed. And we need to provide a calculation to verify his suspicion. Right? Now let us go about doing that. Now, how would you go about doing that? Now 5.2.4, you're gonna say, all right, the number of helmets at the beginning of the year, right? So at the beginning of the year, I had how many helmets? Right. Now at the beginning of the year, I had what, 30 units of helmets, right? I had 30. So I had 30 helmets. Now, how many helmets did I purchase during the year? So okay, let me just do this. So purchased. How many helmets did I purchase during the year with regards to units? I purchased 75 units of helmets, right? So I'm gonna say, all right, I purchased 75 helmets. How many were returned? I returned 5 helmets, right? So it's gonna be 5. Now, how many helmets were sold? Right? Sales. I sold 85 helmets. Now, I need to subtract this. So I sold 85, as well as my returns. I need to subtract it. So here, 5. So here I would say the number of helmets at the beginning, right? So I'm going to say 80 plus the number of helmets which were purchased during the year plus 75, subtract the number of helmets which were returned, which were 5, minus the number of helmets which were sold. So at the end of the year, I expect to have what? Number of helmets. I expect to have what? 15 helmets, right? Now, but here on my information, they said what? They said that at the end of the year, which is the 30th of September 2017, I had 12 units of helmets, right? Meaning that what? The difference between the two, right? The two, which is 3, right? 3 helmets were stolen, right? Difference between the two, at the end of the year, I expect to have 15, but then during my physical stock count, I find out that I only have 12. As a result, I can identify that 3 helmets were stolen. Now, The question further asks us to say, okay, ask us that what can Mike do to improve internal control, right, of stock? Now, what can they do to improve internal control, right? Now, state 3 points. Now, the first point I could say that they could do a regular physical stock count, right? Regular. This doesn't mean that they do not conduct physical stock count. They do conduct them, but now they must do it on a regular basis, right? Now, what can they do also, right? Division of duties, right? If they suspect that there is any staff involved, they should divide duties, meaning that the person who records entry of stock or helmets shouldn't be also the person who verifies stock or verifies the number of helmets in the books of the company, right? There must be division of duties, right? The person who receives stock cannot be the person who records stock. Okay. Now, what else? What other point can you make? Now, you can say they can place tracking devices on the products, right? The security price checks, that just like how they do in retail companies, especially those companies that sell clothes, right? There are security devices or tags on those clothes. As a result, whenever you try to steal them, an alarm will go on as you are trying to get out of the premises of the company, right? Now they could also buy in smaller quantities, right? Because remember, large stock that could make this your staff to see less movement of the stock. As a result, they may be tempted to steal. So if you order in small quantities, there would be less stock. As a result, there would be more movement of the stock, and your staff, right, or your employees may be discouraged to steal, right? Those are the points in which you could give. Now, that will be all for this. If you ever you have any questions, always feel free to reach out. Thanks.